So, why the title of the Fourth War? When they asked Einstein how would it be World War III, he said, I have no idea, but I know how will be the Fourth World War. And he answered, it will be with sticks and stones.
Can you tell me about your work?
Yes, I can start with the title. The title is The Fourth War, and it's called The Fourth War because when I remember when I was a child, I was around 9 or 10, started to get conscious about what was going on around the world and around me. I remember that something that struck me, and it has repeated in a long time, was a question that they asked Einstein about. The question was, how will be the Third World War? And this question, obviously, you have to think at that age there was still the Cold War, there was still the Berlin Wall, and there was still a big friction, between the States and Russia. And I remember that potential of total destroying the planet started to get, I started to get conscious about it. And that's something that has been underlying on my subconscious, I guess, through many years. Well, what struck me was his answer was, I don't know how it will be the Third World War, but I know how will be the fourth one. It will be with sticks and stones.
So this idea was in your subconscious, and what made you start this work?
Well, yes, it was. The idea was there. The only thing I never expressed it in some way. And I remember being in Florence, studying, some sculpting and art. And I got very struck by the relief from the Battle of the Centaurus by Michelangelo. Actually, when reading his biography, he had actually, for him was very important also, he had actually a conflict with his master on how he was representing this work. So what really struck me was, that he actually didn't, in his relief, there were no human and animal, a mix, but only humans. So the thing he was expressing is that humans are animals over other humans when there's a war. And that thing really struck me as well. So what I did is that I started actually this relief saying, I'm going to try to simplify the simplification of the Battle of the Centaurus from Michelangelo, which is the center of this piece. What happened is that when I had done that, we had the Iraq and Iran war with George Bush, and the idea of you are with me or against me, that polarity that was developed, that philosophy of the clash of civilizations. And I say, it has happened centuries after Michelangelo did this. It has happened centuries since the first idea of the Battle of the Centaurus, that actually the Romans and the Greeks, actually, they play already with that piece of work, of art. And I say, this is still the same thing. So it's when I start to develop that this could, develop even into a larger picture. And what is that larger picture? Is that actually in this world what I'm trying to express is that what this is a clash of civilization in one side and another side, but actually it's a clash of ways of thinking. That's why we get into wars, because there's always a dichotomy on the way people think. That is, these people in one way that I try to express in this side, which is a very dogmatic way of thinking. And that's why I kind of play with some religious signs, because usually religion is a dogmatic thought. And what happens is that if you don't think the same way than me, you are just in the other side. And this is more the liberal way of thinking. Okay? And what is happening usually in any kind of war, of conflict, of clash, is actually that these two ways of perceiving the world that they just collapse. And that's why we get into World War II. You know, two ways of thinking. You know, the Nazi way of thinking and the liberal, you know, and the free world in other terms. Same thing will happen if we get into a third world war. Same thing will happen if we get into a fourth world war, even if it's with sticks and stones. Same thing repeats, because humans, one thing I guess it's in our nature is that we get into conflict when we believe strongly in something and in the other side they don't admit it or think our way. And that's where really arises all the conflicts. The 9 copies is, here in the center will be 3, 3, and 3, and then what we'll do is a splash of red, meaning blood. Meaning, also another very interesting thing is that what I try to get also with this work is that the question of why sometimes even this horrific realization of or representation of something that is happening or may happen or will happen, why does it attract us so much? It's that thing that Goya start to play, you know? Why some things that are horrific attracts us so much when it's into art. And that's what I try also to get people to question, you know, what's inside our nature. We say, okay, you know, we're against violence, we're against war, we're against all of this, but at the same time there's an attraction into that. And that's something that puzzles me. Is like, there's a lot of explanations. That is, it took me many months to develop, but this is not only this. Here, you know, we have different representations. For example, we get, we're here motherhood, we get the ages of woman, we get thought, we get love, we get youth, we get friendship, we get cruelty, we get preparation for war, you know, maturity. We get things from Abraham and Isaac, you know, which started, you know, if you think about it, the Bible starts with a very cruel way and fanatic way of treating your child. Something that I would never dare do some harm to my child. And that's the basic dogmatic way of thinking of many people, that they will do something if they are called by God. So at the end, there's an initiation here that triggers other ways of thinking. Like, for example, here are the believers with very deformed bodies. When I was doing this cannibalism, because and other very horrifying things. Look at these guys. These guys are almost, they cannot get up, and these guys are being very cruel with this. At the same time, about beauty, this is for me one of the most beautiful pieces. It's like a dance, and it attracts me, even I know it has a lot of cruelty on it. So Abu Ghraib was happening at that time, and that I thought, how horrifying that those things are happening, and we get and still get the same reactions, in humans. Another thing I read was The Road from McCarthy, and that really impressed me because McCarthy was The Road that they make the movie later on. He was saying what would happen after a nuclear war. We would end up actually by this, by being people eating each other, and practicing cannibalism, because there would be no other life there. So that's some other parts that really, if you read The Road, you find out that yes, we can end up actually with another war of sticks and stones, and would repeat on that. So even I was watching recently the Walking Dead, and it's very interesting that they were repeating actually the same story. You know, they were only humans surviving towards death people, and the humans were the dangerous people to fight each other, and they were fighting for a preventive war. They were fighting each other because they didn't trust each other that the other could attack them. So it's a preventive war. So it's another thing that we see that it's a repeating theme for humans, for our human species, unfortunately.